Growing Newbury Green, as Martha said, it was a group of us who came up with the idea of growing food in the community, where the idea was it started off with food and became looked at as just as orchards and apples. And I think there was a very clear idea that we wanted to do something which involved trees, and where you could where you didn't necessarily have to do a huge amount of maintenance. I did do a quick calculation that if you look at the nominal average number of tonnes that a person in Britain produces, you'd need about 300 or 400 trees, apple trees, to actually offset your carbon, which in the context of planting 80 odd trees in Newbury doesn't really sort of make a great deal of difference. I mean, the other thing is, of course, that it takes time for those trees to become mature enough to actually capture that amount. So if you can't capture a massive amount of carbon with a fruit tree, what else does it give you within the idea of dealing with climate change? And I think there's three areas which I can highlight to you. Firstly, the most obvious one, fruit, a crop. Because once you've got an established tree, you have an edible crop for the lifetime of the tree, which could be anything up to 30 or 40 years. Just to put this into context, an average decent tree will provide about 25 kilos of fruit a year. The second bit, biodiversity. There are over 3,000 varieties of English apples. If you think about your supermarket, though, how many do you see? Well, I did a quick check on several of the supermarket websites, and I found 9, and most of those were foreign imports. Now, again, context here, on our community orchards, we now have 22 different varieties of apples, pears and plums, of which 11 were natively produced in Berkshire. The third issue, and I think it was one that it was being touched on in the last presentation, is all about custodianship and I suppose you could call it ownership. I don't like that word, because we don't own these trees. We are their custodians. And they're going to be there for 30 or 40 years. And although we are planting trees on council lands, that's about 7 or 8 councils worth council terms which these trees could live for. So we are the custodians, and it's something that a lot of local landowners and developers seem to casually forget whenever they're trying to build as well. So we ask the local people to look after their trees, and our whole ethos is that you can walk past these trees and pick them whenever you like. The idea of embedding these attitudes and these ideas in our communities, which is something that can also come with planting these kind of things, without having to do the whole structured programming.
We all know that planting trees is one of the favourite methods of carbon offsetting. So absorbing carbon dioxide to compensate for emissions that are made elsewhere that can't actually be eliminated. Of course, carbon offsetting is an essential tool, as long as it's used carefully, because some emissions just can't be eliminated. Of course, it is open to abuse and profiteering, as we maybe are familiar with as well. So we shouldn't rely on carbon offsetting to solve our climate change problems. The Lockdown Woods project aim was part of the National Friends of the Earth campaign to increase UK tree cover, to increase carbon storage in the UK, and to increase biodiversity and linking of habitats and so on. We were aiming to get community involvement in planting trees, especially to encourage children to be interested in growing trees and planting them. Over last winter, we planted 2,000 saplings and whips, which are small saplings, 20 indigenous deciduous species, which hopefully will all grow well in this area. It was a community, in a series of community events, so we reckon we engaged about 200 people. So in 20 years' time from now, these 2,000 trees will be locking up 40 tonnes of carbon per year. That's all. So imagining that the town council carbon footprint is probably in the region of 40 tonnes per year at the moment, then our trees will offset this once they're mature. Newbury Town Council and the West Berkshire Council are doing great with tree planting, but there's potential for planting more. And finally, community projects are a great way to meet nice people, get valuable environmental work done, and they're actually a really good antidote to worrying about climate change, because you're actually doing something positive.